All this happened. What's happening? Oh yeah. All right. All right. Hello, Blake Brennan here, and
Steve Townsend.
And we're back on making some videos for new and aspiring whip makers. We thought we'd just share some videos, some topics that just, we looked at or come up through the years, just think that might help you out a little bit. And one thing that I think is important, it's for every whip maker, that if they haven't yet, is it's really important to see other people's work in person, or in person. Pics, it's kind of hard to tell from pics what a whip is sometimes. It's hard to tell, what one handles like from that alone, And a lot of people, whip makers are, in America, they're spread out, wherever they are. Like in Australia, it's a mecca. There's a lot more people nearby. You can run by, you can shadow, you can see stuff. There's a lot more whip events, whip making events. Mm-hmm. But in America, it's really scattered. So there's probably a couple whip makers in your state, and if you find those guys, you definitely get together. But I've seen a lot through the years. Like I was fortunate when I started. I already was a whip cracker with a decent collection I saw, and other people just start whipping because they want to whip for themselves. And so, one thing we want to talk about was the importance of how important it is to see other work, whether it be good, whether it be bad, whatever, just the importance of having something in your hand.
Yeah, it's, when I first started making whips, I was I just suddenly got real passionate about doing it. So I just dove in and tried to learn everything I could. And it took me a while before I even got into making whips out of kangaroo. But I had never seen a nice whip. I had never seen an actual David Morgan or anything like that at all. I had never seen anything that hadn't been made by me, or anything that I hadn't seen at a flea market that was just not a piece of junk. And then, when I got hooked up with Blake, I got to go out to his house and see. He had some David Morgans I got to look at, and some Joe Strain whips, and it was a real eye-opener, because I instantly saw, from even then, from my limited experience as a maker, I saw things from that point of view, and saw that I was doing a lot of things completely backwards than the way David and Joe did it. In particular, I remember one of the things I was doing, I was leaving my strands really wide for a long portion and then tapering them later, so I had my strand drops happening way too early in the whip. And that's not the way they did it.
And you see, Steve's first goal was to make a David Morgan-esque style whip. So that's why he's saying when he finally got to see David and Joe's work, he was like, wow, I'm not doing it like that. Yeah.
Right, yeah. They both, obviously, they tapered their strands more from the start, so to speak, and then dropped later down the whip. And that was just something that came across me as being real obvious, that I had no idea that I was doing incorrectly. And just other things, like seeing the Joe Strain stuff, it was, wow, I didn't know something could be made this nice. I didn't know you could have a whip this smooth. It was just, again, an eye-opener to see the other work of these great whip makers. And that's just very beneficial if you're just getting into whip making and you've only seen the stuff that you've made. It may look really good, and you may be able to look at it and say, well, my seam's straight and this and that and the other, so I think it's okay. But
it's always, I guess, part of it saying it's always good to have a muse, something to inspire you or to look, try like. I'm not saying start replicating any other body stuff, but it is good to have somebody that's been in the business longer. Like if it's a basketball team, not everybody wants to be Michael Jordan, but it's like that was an inspiration, or fighting Bruce Lee or whatever. Like people have these things, I want to fight like that guy, or I want to, dribble like that guy. That's for a reason, because you got to learn how they do it, as opposed to we just, we never had basic warm-ups in a basketball team. We just all learned to do it on our own. It helps to have somebody in the sport or makes things the way you want that's better off to learn from. It really helps get over a lot of hurdles that you just can't think of. Seeing, so I call that a muse. So whenever I talk about muse, I'm like, that whip's a good muse. It's good music for that. Yeah. But so what were some of the other? Was that the main thing when you say you first saw a good strain? Or that first day where you saw actually other makers stuff? Because that was the first time you saw any other whip besides the ones, because he was really new at the time. Like,
Yeah.
you know, just a few leather whips at that time, kangaroo leather, and some other stuff behind that, but just that. And you got to see that, David, or Shiseido. I forget what else I had. Maybe a Tella.
Victor Tella.
I don't remember what else I had at that time. I cycled through a lot of whips, you know, here and there.
I just remember being amazed at how heavy the handles were, because I wasn't really putting any lead into my whips. I didn't, at the time, I didn't know, you know, where to get the lead sheeting from, or how that got put into the handle. You know, as far as I knew, it was, people said they lead loaded their handle. I thought maybe they had a lead shot or something. And I had no idea. All I know is this whip feels great. It's got some weight to it.
Yeah, like, because it was very common for a lot of different whips or stock whips, other stuff, not always even just use a slap lead. They'll just use thick cow, you know, like a, you know, thick. So, I mean, it's not always, you know, some whips don't really even bother with
Well,
that.
I was naturally drawn to the indie whips.
Andy's got to have some weight, you know.
Yeah, they did.
Or anything else? Like, or that, so was there something just,
No, just
anything that made you take, like, there, like, I can't wait to go home and now try this? It was pretty much just the overall taper and dropping that you didn't.
well,
had
they
the
were,
math for
you
it.
know, inspirational in
In a
terms
lot of
of,
ways,
of trying to get just like what to strive for, what to try to, you know, obvious when you see, especially if I could break out the whip that I had most recently made at that point and lay it here on this table, and then lay a Joe Strain indie whip right next to it, you can immediately see that I've got room to improve with just
And all
every
the, all
aspect.
the
I
10
mean,
whip making points of light or whatever it is to make a quality body.
Yeah,
I see the chasm in all this.
mostly strand prep was my biggest problem. Well, I mean, I'm not saying I was a great platter or anything like that, but I'm saying I think my worst problem at the time was that I didn't realize how much improvement could be made upon my work just by having nicer strands and better strands.
Yeah, you know, like I always refer to the overlay sometimes as the wrapping paper, and you know that you know, like this is a side note, but like I don't really think binding's necessary, and so you got to realize we say this a lot, but like, well, braiding is a binding. I mean, that's what braiding is. It's the original binding for all it. So, you know, when it comes out wrapping paper, you know, that's also the one thing that usually, even though everything, if the insides aren't done right, it's crazy, it'll show, but it's like that wrapping paper really helps that present.
Yeah.
You know, not only fit well, braid well, roll well, but I mean, it's also just how it looks. But that's one thing that, it took me just a minute till I got some information on what I need to do, but a lot of people, I think, have that problem too, is there's not really an explanation for most people to understand where you taper to, and then where it's no longer taper and just drop strands. So a lot of people don't know exactly, the taper doesn't work out, and so they just drop a strand, and they're kind of not sure what the ratio is supposed to be. And that was formative for me too when I first started. That's a big one, because after that, I think every other layer makes more sense, because when you get the idea of that and why you're doing things.
Right. Well, and then we could get into a whole conversation about construction of bellies and everything.
Another time.
Yeah.
Another time,
You know,
going on.
But it was there are a lot of things that I saw that I just never would have noticed. You know, I noticed that to me that it seemed like the Joe Indie whip was a much more refined, smoother version of the David Morgans, because you had actually three David Morgans, one that was heavily used and two that
all made by David. These were two of them were made in '94 by him, or '93, '94. Yeah, one was a few years before that.
the two of them had never been cracked. They still had the little kangaroo tags.
They were held up. Two David Morgans never cracked a day of their life. It was amazing.
Right. But I could tell just looking even at the new ones and the one that was thoroughly used. That
Joe Strain.
yeah, he was. It seemed to me more about making a really, really great whip, and not that David Morgan didn't. He designed a great whip, but it's very rugged. It's very rough, and if the strands are off a little bit as far as width, this strand next to that strand, I don't think he really. He didn't pour over that detail.
Yeah, he didn't really spend too much time caring about the matching. He just wanted a good, solid, functioning whip that would do the job, like work. Like his phrase, not that he invented it, but he'd always say, "Whips were meant to be cracked." It's like he's not making this for you guys to hang on a wall for 50 years and celebrate. He's like, you better get out there and start using the whip.
Yeah, it's a tool.
You know, and that's the reason why I've even passed along whips, because I'm like, what's the point of having a whip I won't crack? Just for bragging rights for no one that ever comes out here. It's like, not that I held him for that, but I'm like, if it's a trophy and I'm not going to use it, I might as well move it on to someone else that will, because it's just, when's enough's enough whips, you know. There's a whole other rabbit hole. When's enough's enough whips for some people.
Right. Right.
You know.
But no, it was educational, and I think it was a turning point for me as a maker because, it gave me something to strive for. It showed me just how much better a whip could be than what I was making, and that was important for me to learn. And I think that's important for a lot of people. It would be important. It's just one of those things that you need to go through to see other people's stuff and to be more aware of what there is out there. So yeah, it's important to know who in your community or close in your area you could meet up with that might have other whips that you could look at. And it's also a great opportunity to decide if you're thinking about buying a whip, what maker do you want to get your whip from? If you can see their work.
Yeah, even if you're not a whip maker, just you want to buy a whip, it's always good to. And in some ways, to help make this easier, like would be get online and find people in your area. See if there's a whip convention. And not everybody can fly out to LA for the whip meet, but that's probably the best event you can get all year to see more whips and more makers than you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
One spot in America, there's nothing that can top that.
You would definitely see some very nice whips.
Yeah, but even anything that can get another whip in your hand by anyone, whether it's nylon, leather, kangaroo, cow, doesn't matter the maker. It's just always, if you've never held another whip. And then with that being said, just because you get another whip doesn't mean that suddenly, that whip's what I need to strive for. It could be worse than your product. I mean, this is a lot of whips and whipping. I mean, it's almost as limitless. Like, where did you get your honey from? Because every bee in every area is different. So I mean, but it's good. It's just good to check other stuff out. On the other swing side of that, not just seeing whips that are something you want to strive for, like a muse. You will even see whips that you find less desirable or you don't see as well, and that can actually be informative too. And sometimes you'll see a whip where something's wrong with it, but it's actually informative to you on that you're doing the same thing sometimes. You don't even see it till you see someone else. So there's a lot of things, seeing any of the spectrum from really great or really, really bad, can kind of help out. So, it's good to do that too, but it definitely helps to see something else. Even if it's a bad whip, you can see why. It just helps you understand why it's better, why you're doing what you're doing is better, and keep doing it, so it doesn't hurt to compare anything or to try anything new. You either gain from it or realize why you're doing what you're doing is better in your opinion. And even if it is worse than 9 out of the 10 whip making points lie, there may be one thing they do better that you notice, like, oh wow, they cleaned that up, or man, his knots, he doesn't do anything else, but his knots are, they blow my knots out of the water. You never know. So there's always something good to see, I always like that line, you don't need to be a great actor to spot a bad one. And, it's like that in anything. You don't need to be a great basketball player to see if this guy can actually move a ball, but whips, can be kind of hard, like it's easy to see a gun is machined usually and built, so you can see a gun functions, but something that's completely handcrafted from start to finish, swords like that too. I was talking to somebody the other day, I'm like, it's like these are craftsmen too, and I'm like, just thankful that I don't just hit a whip against something and it shatters in half because the fire heat was wrong. I'm like, that's got to be even more crazy. I mean, can you imagine that? Like you just go pop it. It's like,
Right.
That'd be insane. Everyone's
Crashing of your dreams.
but handcrafted items is a lot that it's a lot more to it. All right. So, is there anything experiences you might have got from seeing some of the various whips I got to pull in here that were thing, not naming it whip or anything, because we've even had like $10 eBay stuff at $50. I mean, I would grab stuff that I'd see every now and again just to have fun with it. Like, this would be fun to play with,
Right.
Take apart. Is there anything that you saw that was on that bad scale that was like, that is either a learning moment for you to make you better or just made you feel good? Like, what, at least I can at least say that ain't gonna be my stuff.
Yeah, I've seen all kinds of stuff that I didn't care for, from whip makers that have very good reputations, that have been in the business and since retired. So, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I don't know why you would do or how you did, but yeah, definitely some things that I did not want to do. But and then there again, by seeing that and seeing, having a good idea what they might have done to get that effect, but knowing that I don't want that effect, so I'm not going to strive for this. This is not what I'm after, And in particular, I guess it's not going to hurt to say anything. I'm just not a big fan of the Indy 4 whips, the Terry Jacka models, because of that stiff transition. Now a lot of guys love that, and that's great, but that transition is so stiff for so long, it makes the whip unruly to use. Now, not to say that you can't use that whip really well.
Or learn to make it to where it is an extension of your hand perfectly too. Yeah.
Yeah, you can do that if that's your thing, but it's going to take some getting used to, and I just didn't like it, and it didn't take many time. Now, I will say that the whip, you know, it was on the large side. Those are actually really beefy whips as well.
I've had several jackets I've slid in here, and some of them were Indy models. And, you know, we've got anything I bring in, I'm like, check this out.
26, 27 millimeters at the transition or something. It was pretty big, but it was heavy. But I will say that once you got it up in the air for a cattleman's crack, it was 10 foot long, and it didn't take a lot of effort. But there again, there's so much weight involved that it wouldn't take a lot of effort if you've got a relatively nice taper. But, so yeah, just by looking at that whip, I'm like, okay, me personally, I don't put a whole lot of transition binding in my whips. And looking at the effect that gave, I really don't, you know, I don't like to do that.
It allowed you to make a choice that, yeah, that's not that anything's wrong with that, but that's not you.
That's not me. No, I've got customers that when they get a whip from me, they ask, will you put some transition in?
What do you do in situations like that?
Absolutely, I put transition in the binding. If that's what they want, I'll bind the, you know, the Jesus out of it if that's what they're after. It's not the way I like to feel a whip in my hand, but if that's what they want, if that's what they feel like is going to make it a better whip or last longer, then that's what I'll do.
Yeah, Joe told me once, and I think it explains a lot. Just like you got to make the whips other people want to make the whips you want, because you know it's the way it is too. You got to know how to make whips for other people. If this is to be, you know, a profession, because a lot of these videos we're kind of talking about, you know, not just for any whip maker, but just let you know, like this is what you'll get into when it starts to be a full-time job. Or, you know, it's kind of some of our angle too. Like, how does that help? You know.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's one of the things that really helped me to get to where it could have possibly even been a full-time job, where I was cranking out material or a product that was good enough to really pass off as a professionally made whip. To me, was being able to see what a professionally made whip is, and at the time realizing, okay, this is not what I'm making. I got work to do, you know, and it put me in my place and let me know what I needed to do, and at the same time inspired me to even more so do it, you know. So I just found it very, very helpful myself to see other people's work at a relatively close to when I started making. You know, again, I'd only made 3 or 4 weeks.
Would you say that alone was probably one of the most pivotal moments for you as far as
I would say
making a superior, like, because I call it light bulb. Sometimes you're doing stuff really off, you get a lot of light bulb moments. Like, that's why you do it. That's why you do it. That makes sense. But they don't pop as much the more you're in something. They're few and far between. But would you say that was probably the most, or how would it rank?
I don't know. Because I talked to, you know, I emailed back and forth a lot with Bernardo Del Carpio, and he gave me a lot of aha moments as far as typically how you know, overlay prepping might go. Taper wise, just things that he really helped me with. Just basically the construction, getting away from plaiting over the whole handle with the bellies and using a yoke and saving time and material realistically. There were a lot of things that I got from him that were real eye-popping in my beginning.
Changes the way you even make them.
Right.
Yeah, that's construction.
And I've gotten to see some of his whips too. And I'll say Bernardo does make an extremely accurate looking Morgan whip, and they're heavy because
but his heel knots are heavy. Usually they're heavier than everyone else's. And, you know, nothing wrong with that. Just you know,
that's what he does. Yeah. Another thing, you know, again,
just feels like there's like an extra flapolette or something. Whatever it is, you can just grab it and be like, oh, that's got to be a Del Carpio. You can just kind of.
Well, it feels massive. Yeah. It feels, you know, weighty. But then again, you're talking about an Indy whip, and that's you know,
in a 10-foot, you know, you're talking. It's also not a delicate whip. It's not a target whip. It's an Indy whip. It's a 10-foot bull whip. So you know that extra weight works like the counterbalance like on a sword. It really, you know, kind of does help to have that weight.
Yeah, I don't know. I remember the first thing I thought when I picked up one of the Morgans or Strange, all of them really back then, to me, just feeling that weight, because I you know, and think I was making these bull whips on a spring steel at the time.
Oh yeah.
Using the Bernie method. So I was braiding, you know, all of the handle and everything in leather, but there wasn't any weight added to the whip, so it was just a spring steel handle. It's still a nose heavy whip, you know what I mean? So that was bad. But I just remember picking those handles up and feeling that, going, oh my God, I got to figure out what that is because I like it, you know. And then we, of course, we have to go out and crack crack the whips too, and that was just as educational. I got to feel, okay, this is what, you know, you're cracking a Joe Strain Indy whip. That's a pretty good indication of what they probably ought to feel like, you know. I mean, I knew even then he had been one of the biggest names in the business. And, I really enjoyed seeing his work, and yeah. Then you had some of his stuff that was like contest-winning, leather braiding competition whips that were just
24 Platinum won a comp, Rocky Mountain Leather Deal.
looked like it had been braided by a machine. Man. It was inspiration. Like, there's no seam twist whatsoever. The strand drops are
it's so
perfect. I mean,
so considered. You name it, it's pretty slick.
So yeah, I'll strive for that. I'm probably not ever going to do that, but I won't quit trying. It's good stuff. You know, again, just told me here's what can be done if you know what you're doing, and keep trying. You know, that's all I can do.
You know, if you didn't have that experience to see other whips by other good known weapon makers, especially, or people that are, kind of want to you can still figure this stuff out. I just think that experience will turbocharge a learning curve. I mean, if you did basketball and you want to be good at college or you got goals, they send you to basketball camps where you play with college players. Or if you're in college, they will have, or I love NBA pros come out. Like one pro comes out, they'll run a camp and teach you guys tricks and play some bad skills. So, I mean, it just makes sense. I mean, it would be helpful to go out there and see, to do that. And if you can't, I mean, you kind of figure it out. You can pick the brains of whip makers as much as you can and help, but once again, it's like, to feel someone else's, I think, is pivotal, good or bad. I'm not saying, get someone else's, yours sucks because you haven't, I'm not saying yours sucks because you haven't cracked someone else's whips. I'm not saying that at all, but what it will help you, the learning curve, because it's like, hey, Model T stole the patent for Ford, or Ford stole the patent for the Model T, they made a car company, hey, we're going to make a car company, there's no other cars around, maybe, let's just figure out our own car. It's like, well, it'll help to get in their car, because you're like, that's what their car is. My first thoughts are, these seats suck. Everything else is good, but man. And now you got a whole new angle on you make cars. So, it helps to sample other products. I mean, if you're going to make cupcakes for your living, you might want to sample local cupcake place to see what you're even competing against. Just kind of helps.
Find out why the big names are the big names.
Or what makes you different. Blah, blah. Oh, I'll tell you one. They're vegan. Like no one else is vegan. I mean, you can find things, or they use too much sugar. And we're like, oh, that's great. It's like, yeah, I used to go here. I'm like, yeah, they're good, aren't they? Yeah, they got too much sugar. That's why I made it like this. That's what I thought. I mean, you can even relate to customers sometimes too. But once again, we're just putting up these quick videos. This one was just on finding amused, seeing other works, cracking other whips, and just that it would benefit you as a whip maker, regardless what whip you get. Even if you see a $40 10-foot Indiana Jones Mustang stunt whip on eBay, I wouldn't really say you probably won't, that's worth it, but it's still good to see that. You're like, oh my, they put that much effort in to only make $50 and what it is anyways. But it's good to see that, So, but find another whip maker. Hopefully you find someone. There's got to be a good whip maker in your state, regardless. That has a pretty reputable name. Not a state away. It's always worth the trip. Right. It is always worth the trip. And have fun.
Right. Keep trying. Keep working at it.
Keep braiding.
Keep braiding.
Let's see what time we have left.